everyone. Welcome to Empowering Exceptional Minds, the podcast diving into neurodiversity through real conversations with parents, individuals, and professionals on challenges, strengths, and unique experiences. I'm your host, Maayan Glazer-Koren, an educational therapist, ADHD educator, and ASD specialist. At Educational Therapy LLC, my private practice, we support kids and adults with executive function and learning differences toward confidence and independence. This podcast is a collaboration with Wiz Therapy, connecting individuals to providers and streamlining services for neurodiverse communities. Our goal is to share strategies, stories, and insights to empower families, educators, and professionals. Before we begin, a quick disclaimer. The views and opinions expressed by our guests are their own and do not necessarily reflect those of this podcast or Wiz Therapy. The conversations here are for information and empowerment, not a substitute for professional or medical advice. And most importantly, if you are experiencing a mental health emergency, please dial 911 immediately, or you can text 741-741 to reach the crisis text line in the US for support. Hi, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Empowering Exceptional Minds. Today, we're going to have a very, very serious talk. We're going to talk about something that is often misunderstood, minimized, or mistaken for just picky eating. We're going to talk about ARFID, or Avoidant Restrictive Food Intake Disorder, especially in neurodivergent children and adults. We'll explore what ARFID actually is, why it is common in ADHD, autism, anxiety, OCD, and sensory sensitive individuals, the emotional and nutritional impact of it, and how families and professionals can support without shame or pressure. And most importantly, why eating challenges are often about nervous system safety and not stubbornness. I want to welcome today Lisa. Lisa and I talked about this before, and I'm going to have her introduce herself so you understand really the amount of knowledge that she brings to the table. Lisa, welcome.
Hi, thank you. Yeah, my name is Lisa. I'm a registered dietitian and have been working in eating disorders for about 10 years now. And so working with individuals with ARFID for about that amount of time as well, and have been a dietitian for about 6 years, entirely working with eating disorders, and have come across, I'd say, every subtype of ARFID, from adults to kiddos, and everywhere in between.
So before I hit the record button, we kind of talked about the lack of training out there with pediatricians, maybe also OTs, occupational therapists, where it comes to ARFID. So I just wanted to, this is why the goal for this conversation is really to talk more about this. So can you please explain what is ARFID and how it is different from typical picky eating or eating disorders related to body image?
Yeah, that's such a good question, because I think a lot of people get missed too for all of that confusion as well, or because of all of that confusion as well. So ARFID, like you said earlier, is Avoidant Restrictive Food Intake Disorder. The shortest, quickest way I will explain it to people who have no knowledge or experience around it is, I will say, it's extreme picky eating. So it's not just picky eating, but it is something that is inhibiting someone's life pretty significantly, for a lot of different reasons, either health-wise or ability to participate in certain things with family or socially. And there's a couple different subtypes too that I can certainly get into. And then the way it also differs from maybe what you would consider a traditional eating disorder that's rooted in body image is it typically is not rooted in body image. I say typically, though, because I do think it is hard to be a person in this world and have no thoughts about your body. And so I've also come across a lot of people who were missed for the ARFID diagnosis because they did have body image distress, but they definitely had ARFID. They just also had body image distress, but that wasn't the root of why they struggled with food.
Yeah, that is really interesting topic, and I would like if you can talk more about, you said the subtypes. That would be
Yeah,
great because I don't have a lot of knowledge about it either. So I'm interested to hear.
absolutely. Yeah. So there's three subtypes of ARFID. There is the sensory subtype, fear of adversive consequences, and sensory sensitivity, sorry, fear of adversive consequences, and lack of interest. So, fear of adversive consequences is typically when somebody has a hard time eating because of maybe fear of vomiting or fear of an allergic reaction or fear of choking or something along those lines, sometimes based on past experience or like a trauma response from something that's happened. And sometimes it's hard to know where it started or where the root was. But it then makes it hard to either eat particular foods or even sometimes eat at all. Um, and then sensory sensitivity is, I think, the one that most people know about, where um, people have or kiddos have a hard time with certain types of textures or really prefer only one type of texture. But that also isn't just texture. Sometimes it's also smell or the visual of a particular food, or fixation on a certain color, maybe of food or something along those lines. So it's more sensitivity based, or sensory based. And then lack of interest. I see a lot with ADHD, which is um, where there is just no kind of like motivation really to
It's
eat. They just,
boring.
yes, exactly. So they like will go their whole day and it's not intentional. They just don't eat and they don't really have the motivation to eat. And so I have to work with them a lot on what I call mechanical eating. And so, or eating by the clock.
Is that motivation? It's because with effort and energy that it takes effort and energy to eat. Because that's where
Good
I
question.
see.
Yeah, probably both. But I also don't think that there is the same dopamine response always,
Right.
too.
And I have a question about the first one that you said. Um, how can you tease it out from OCD though?
The fear of adversive consequences.
Yes.
I think there's a lot of overlap often. I don't know. I think that it can also be like OCD at the same time. So it's a good question. I don't totally know because I'm not the one that does the diagnoses.
So interesting though.
It is. It's really interesting. And what's also interesting is I think, the most common to have overlap between multiple of them. Like I've had
Yes.
many people who don't just have one, they have all three or they have two of them. That's, I think, the most common actually, and really difficult.
Yeah. Yes. Because, okay, here's the thing. I'm venting.
Yeah.
Listeners, you know me. I'm venting. You take your child to the pediatrician or you take them to the psychiatrist, whatnot, and you say, my child is a very picky eater. And it's and your child is also might be have OCD or general anxiety disorder, and they're probably ADHD or autistic or have sensory sensitivities. And then it's you kind of I'm sorry, it's just good because I have a picky eater, however
Yeah.
you want to call it. And it's like, what? And I was a picky eater. So it's like, how do you steal them? So what do you do? Do you like, I know for me, it's a sensory sensitivities. So that's an
Mhm.
awareness. But when you're
Mhm.
taking your child to the pediatrician or to the psychiatrist, I mean, how can we get the diagnosis?
Mhm. Yeah, I think that it honestly, unfortunately, seems to really rely on parents just knowing they're not getting enough, that something is wrong, unless you get really lucky to come across a healthcare provider that is concerned enough and pushes you in the right direction.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So you guys didn't mean to vent, but here I am. So what signs um, ARFID often show up in childhood, especially with our neurodivergent kids?
Mhm.
How does it look like?
Yeah, I mean, I think again, it kind of depends on which subtype it is, but you might see, I think a really common example is you see them, um, a really common example, and maybe also why it's hard to differentiate sometimes from just picky eating, I put that in quotes,
Yeah.
um, is their diet is very limited. And so, but when I say very limited, it's not like my kid won't eat vegetables necessarily. It's like I only eat mac and cheese and chicken nuggets. Or I have a kiddo I work with who only eats Oreos, literally only. And so it, again, there's different variations of ARFID. So I also don't want to like narrow anyone or cut anyone out who there is some struggle. Even if it isn't to that same degree, they certainly still deserve support, but it's typically a little bit more on the extreme end. Maybe only beige foods feel comfortable, or I have a kiddo who's terrified of green food, for example, and calls everything broccoli if it's green, even if it's like a pasta. And so that's one way to catch it. Another would be if they're not growing appropriately per their growth charts, if they are like a pretty low trender consistently throughout their life, but that's not necessarily a part of the like family genetics. They just happen to be a low trender, or they've lost a significant amount of weight and or are not growing the way that they are supposed to height wise. That is, I think, the most common way doctors will tend to catch them. But it's unfortunate because there are a lot of people who struggle who have come to me later in life, and their doctor had always said, well, yeah, it sounds like you have a hard time, but you're fine because you're growing fine.
Hmm. Yeah. And what about the vitamin deficiencies
Vitamin deficiency, great. Yeah.
and
Also great.
GI issues?
Yep. Also a great point. Great call out. That also is a big thing that will come up is a lot of vitamin deficiencies. That's also, I think, sometimes where the doctors will catch things is say like, hey, what's going on here? We might need some extra support. And GI issues are also incredibly common. Kind of everywhere in between, truthfully. Also, behavioral issues because of GI issues are very common.
Yeah, like anxiety.
Anxiety, or even just like reactiveness, because no one feels good when their stomach doesn't feel good. There's such a strong like gut brain connection there, and
Right.
I think that we kind of will just like blame the kiddo sometimes, like, oh, they're difficult or whatever it might be, when really it's like they don't feel good.
No, they don't.
Yeah.
And that will affect functioning, like sleep, um, sustaining attention,
Yep.
emotional, like the mood, like
Yeah.
regulation overall.
Yes, regulation is exactly the word I was looking for. I also think it's really common too, and one thing to keep an eye out for is where the lack of interest is. I will see often kids will go like all day, like at school without eating, and then not eat until they come home, and so they're like exhausted and they have no energy and they don't understand why, but they haven't eaten all day.
Yeah. I mean, I'm like, it's like I have like this folder in my brain right now of my clients, and it goes like one by one. I do see some of
Right.
them. Like, oh my gosh. Okay, um, so how do sensory processing, because we did touch that, differences affect eating, especially for our kids who um maybe spectrum or ADHD, and
Mhm.
why can certain textures, smells, temperatures, or food presentation feel overwhelming or unsafe for them?
Mhm. Yeah, I think it can be either like based on an experience that like really just stuck with them, maybe like you don't even understand, until you really start asking questions like when did this start? Either from parents or the kid or the adult. And then realize like, oh, I don't know. Because sometimes it's really not what you'd expect. Like this really traumatic event happened and I was eating this food at the same time, and that like sight of that food or that smell of that food, now every time I see it or smell it, I'm dysregulated, but they don't even know that's the connection until they start really getting into it. And sometimes it's also, there's a lot, I think, with neurodivergent kiddos and people, they're often super tasters, and
Mm-hmm.
so things that maybe are just like kind of salty or kind of sweet to us, or kind of spicy or whatever, is like that extreme, like times 10 times 100 to someone who's a super taster.
You're
So we're like,
describing me.
yeah, there we go. Yeah, so you get it. Yeah, so it's like, no, this is a pretty mild taste, and they're like, what? Like I've literally seen that reaction where they're like, I don't understand what you're saying.
Yeah, I'm like the one who complains on this is too sweet. I can't
Yeah,
eat that.
yeah,
Or too
exactly.
salty. I'm
Yep.
the person who smells the stuff in the house also.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a common one too. I'll have a lot of kiddos who like won't go into the kitchen when certain things are being cooked because it just like makes them nauseous. It's just the smell of it.
Yep.
Because I think all of the senses, I don't know this for sure, but I would imagine all the senses are heightened if taste is heightened.
I don't know. I just don't like to be around food that smells unpleasant to me.
Yeah, which is fair. And I think nobody does. And that's the thing is just the difference between, something that's unpleasant to me would be 100 times that to you.
Yeah, true. So, what are some emotional experiences children and teens that with ARFID may have at school?
Mm-hmm.
Um, Family meals, you mentioned social gatherings, and even
Yeah,
restaurants. I mean, that sounds so limiting.
yeah. It definitely is and can be. I think at school is definitely a common one, and I see so many different struggles from being too distracted to be able to eat, and really needing support from the school and around lunchtime, or having a hard time with like what is being served at school. Um, and having like that not be options that the kiddo is willing to or can eat. Um, and also sometimes I come across this a lot where it's like the items that they can eat aren't really like portable. So they can't
Mm,
necessarily bring it to school. So it's like maybe I only eat grilled cheese. Sure, you can pack a grilled cheese, but by the time they get to lunch, they're not eating the cold grilled cheese.
I know
And
that
so,
one. Believe me.
yeah, yeah. So that is there's a lot of stuff that comes up with school that I'm often navigating with kids and parents. Social gatherings, I think restaurants are really hard because they're overwhelming
Mm.
because there's so many senses going on. And so I've definitely worked with people to like wear headphones when they're at restaurants so that they at least have one less like sensory thing that they're receiving in that moment. But also maybe the food that's being served
Exactly.
there, yeah, is not something they can eat.
Yeah. We always try to accommodate like our son. It's like, um, okay, which restaurant will he find something that he can eat?
Right, right. Is there
Or
at
I
least
can
like
eat.
one,
I'm also
yeah,
problematic.
yeah, is there at least like one backup option there, or like one option that's doable? And if not, also is there something we can like bring to the
Mhm.
restaurant that you can have?
I'm just really interested because I'm like, I hear it a lot with parents is that let's say they eat one thing and it's fine. Like then the next day they don't want to touch it.
Yeah.
Same thing.
Yeah, that is very, very hard. And I think that's where the intentional work with a team is really important because like, and I guess that's something I really want to emphasize is like it is exhausting and so hard for parents to be trying to figure this out on their own and also then hard for the kiddo when we're just kind of like spinning in circles. Um, and so I think like having a trained team to try to like help you push through some of these stuck points is helpful.
So how can we support these kids and adults without creating shame or pressure or
Mm-hmm.
power struggle around food?
Mm-hmm. That again, honestly, like the answer is like it kind of depends on the person and the kid. It depends on the diagnosis, and it also is different. Like the answer is very different, of course, for like just typical feeding or like more general feeding issues versus ARFID. My like answer would be very different for each of them. Um, but and so the approach would get like very nitty gritty, or my answer would get very nitty gritty when it comes to like what is the actual approach or what is the actual response for someone with ARFID. It would be like, I don't know if you want me to go into that, but like enacting like, or like hopefully getting an FBT trained team that specializes in ARFID.
What is that? What does it stand for?
Family based therapy or family based treatment, AR, so for ARFID.
Mm. And where can we find somebody like that?
So that you can honestly, like ask your doctor for referrals. Usually they should, if they know specifically what you're asking for, they should be able to get you set up with someone, or you can go to like, like Psychology Today and or health professionals for dietitians and look for somebody who's specifically FBT trained or trained in eating disorders. Often, not always, but often someone trained in eating disorders who is also trained in FBT has familiarity. So that's the
Hmm.
key I would look for is FBT. If it's for a kid, I guess I should say, if it's for 18 and under.
Is ARFID an eating disorder?
It is, yeah.
Okay.
It's just very different, which is unfortunate because that's why a lot of people that are trained in eating disorders are trained in ARFID is they are often grouped together, which I guess is great and can be really hard because when you're in like a treatment center, I used to work in a treatment center, we're combining, people struggling with ARFID with people struggling with anorexia and bulimia and things like that. And
Yes.
often it's one person with ARFID and like a group of people recovering from anorexia is what I see.
Hmm. So it can be though co-occur with
Yes. Yeah.
anorexia, and
Yeah.
this is so complicated to
Yeah.
tease it out.
Exactly. And that's kind of why I mean, like, I know it's not necessarily, I wish I could give like a quick do this or don't do this, but like, I think it just has to be really individual or nuanced and really carefully like supported by a team so that people don't spin in circles. Cause I see that a lot where like families are just spinning in circles trying to figure out what to do. And it's not helpful for anyone.
And there is the not helpful sentence that people like to say. And I know because I heard it in my family multiple times. Not from a, you know, bad place. It was
Mhm.
like, okay, if they're not hungry, um, sorry, it was like, okay, leave it on the table, and if they're hungry, they'll come and eat.
Yeah, no,
And I'm like, no, they're not gonna come
that's
and
not
eat.
how. Yeah. And again, I think that's like, I mean, in some ways, I'm like, does that even work for any kiddo? But like, especially it's the differences between like someone struggling with ARFID and someone not. You can't apply the same advice. You just can't. And I think people try to do that a lot.
Yeah, I'm quiet because it happens so many times.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, like they're hungry. When they're hungry, they'll come and eat.
Hmm.
Nope.
Right. Or I see a lot of the times too where like, and I like, again, I understand, like you said, like well intended, but
Yeah.
I'll see a lot of the times where it's like, um, you know, you can't have these particular foods because I want you eating healthy, but it's like those are some of the only foods the kid will
Yes.
eat. And at the end of the day, like we just need a foundational enough of calories. Like that is first and foremost, like has to be our first priority before variety comes in. But I think parents get so nervous, like my kid doesn't eat vegetables. I'm not going to give them Pop Tarts. And like, well, so then they're eating nothing. That doesn't seem like a better option.
It's so hard as a parent.
Yeah.
I mean, and also you become like you are just in the kitchen all the time because your child will eat only one type of food
Right.
and you always need to have it always.
Right.
So I understand. I understand and I understand the struggle, and the struggle is
Mhm.
real and it's hard. Um, what do we do with the vitamin deficiencies? I mean, how can we have them? Is this like with pills or just get them like supplements? How does it work? Because it doesn't mean that they will agree to take the supplements.
Right. That's also a struggle, especially with ARFID or neurodivergence is like I think medicine can be really hard. Pills can be really hard, things like that. So first would be identifying the nutrition deficiencies, getting like a full lab panel. And then I honestly recommend most people I work with being on a multivitamin, especially if there's, because I mostly work with ARFID and eating disorders. So if we're struggling in some way with eating enough or getting variety, I'm like, let's just get a multivitamin on board. Um, and then from there, but if the multivitamin isn't doable, then I'll kind of go down different routes. Like, and this is for deficiencies as well. Can we do gummy? Is there a particular flavor of gummy that would feel more doable? Do we need to crush up a vitamin into like a preferred liquid? There are also liquid vitamins. And so there are also, I believe, flavorless liquid vitamins. So there's a lot of different routes to go down to make sure someone gets what they need, but sometimes you have to do like trial and error with a couple different routes before it works.
So we're gonna go up in the age group, and I'm gonna ask you, how does it look like with adults? And
Yeah.
I'm just thinking, you want to date, you're dating somebody,
Yeah.
right? You go in a restaurant. So how does
Yeah.
it go? How does it work with adults? That I'm really interested in that.
Yeah. Um, yeah, adults, it is interesting because typically if I'm working with them, they actually are coming to me saying like, I am having a hard time and I want help. It's a little bit different than like a kiddo where you have to get really creative in the FBT treatment to like find ways to incentivize the kid and things like that instead of like punishment. And so to get them like on board with it.
Oh, hide the zucchini in the meatball.
Or something like that too. Yeah. And with adults, it's a little different because they're coming if they want help, they're coming to us for help. Um, and so again, it depends on the subtype. And then just kind of like going from there. But instead, now it's like led by them. And so it gets to be a little bit more directive, but still really important that it's compassionate, that it's still like they're driving, like with push, right? If they're coming to you for help and they want help, you they often need to be pushed a little bit because they're afraid, but like still met in understanding of what the struggle is. So a lot of the times I will like if I have someone who is, let's say, like struggling with lack of interest, I rely pretty heavily on things like Boost, Ensure, stuff like that to just get them like enough calories in their body, get them like eating enough initially and regularly enough while we're doing our work.
What about food allergies and IBS?
Oh, yeah. What?
Like with combination of ARFID? That's tricky.
It is tricky. Yeah, I've seen, yes. Yeah, I've seen definitely IBS. I've seen connected to fear of adversive consequences because it's like if I eat this, my stomach will hurt.
Mhm.
But it's often true and often a little bit like it's like I think the neurodivergence can cause understandably so like this like feeling of it's like intolerable for my stomach to feel this way. And so sometimes it's even like sitting through, regulating through, like, hey, like, you know, if your stomach is full and you're feeling all the stuff from like IBS, all the movement or constipation or whatever it is, like, can we regulate through that feeling? It's okay for our stomach to hurt sometimes, but it doesn't feel safe often in those experiences. Or sometimes it's fear of throwing up. I've done exposures with people where it's like, okay, we're gonna eat this together and we're gonna just chit chat and there's a trash can here. And if you're sick, it's okay. If you get sick, it's okay. So just kind of like exposure work. Exposure work is a big part of our FID treatment all around.
Like the same one they do with OCD, like ERP.
Yeah, literally ERP is used. Again, the therapists are typically the one guiding it, but dietitians also support it.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, it's
And
it's
like
a lot.
it's a
It's hard
lot.
to heal from for sure, or to get some help someone with for sure. But it's really rewarding work, and I do think working with people with ARFID is some of my favorite because they're always the coolest people, in my opinion.
Yeah, I agree. I had some on my caseload.
Yeah.
Um, so what are some realistic and compassionate approaches
Hmm.
um to improve nutrition? I mean, we already covered the vitamins.
Yeah.
So we want to be flexible. We want to have nervous system safety,
Hmm.
especially because, if we're talking about, like, it's like you said, it's not pleasant to have your gut, right?
Right.
And you are afraid that you will have an accident,
Hmm.
that you will throw up. So you have that
Hmm.
too. So it's like feeding each other with the nervous system
Hmm.
and the ARFID. So what can we do what parents can do like day to day, like few tips that
Mm.
can throw out there to the
To
world.
like help their kiddo through, like if they're having a hard time.
Yeah. What can we say?
I think it's depending on where you're at with the work, but I guess in general, it's a lot of like honestly, validation is really important. Like trying to not dismiss what the kid is experiencing because they are experiencing whether it makes sense to you or not. That's happening to them or they're feeling that. So validating and then really trying to help them regulate. So maybe like walking through breathing with them. And I think often like modeling, like parents modeling that with kids is really cool and really helpful. So like seems like we're getting really like nervous right now. Like I'm going to breathe. You want to breathe with me or something like that. I've also seen it be really helpful to for a lot of kids to separate out the ARFID as like this like separate entity. So if that's the diagnosis has already been provided and the kid is kind of getting some understanding of it, it's like giving it a name and saying like, oh, the ARFID must be really doing X, Y, and Z, or like the monster or whatever it might be is like really making this hard right now. So it's like this, it not making it about the kid, but instead making it like this is a struggle you are dealing with, and I'm here to walk you through it.
Any last words for our listeners?
Um, I don't think so. I think it's just this is all such a nuance. There's so much more we could talk about and so much more we could say because it can keep going and going. And so, um, yeah, just I think mainly if you think there is something slightly off and you don't feel like you're getting the support you need, there's a lot of resources. You go even honestly, like maybe a strange plug, but go down like Reddit, you'll find a lot of like the ARFID. You'll find a lot of people sharing their experiences, but also ultimately find a provider who can really validate the experience, whether it's a doctor, therapist, dietitian, whatever it may be.
Is there like an association or organization like many have with like a directory that people can find?
That's a great question. I do think that if you go down, like, if you go to, I'd imagine like NEDA, they probably, like National Eating Disorders Association, they probably have some resources. Um, but I don't know of any off the top of my head that are specifically for ARFID, unfortunately. There are some books. Um, there's one in particular for parents. I think it's helping your child with uh, extreme picky eating, maybe something along those lines. Um,
Okay. I
yeah,
will I promise to our listeners there will be some I'm gonna put some links
perfect.
in the in the description of this podcast. Lisa, thank you so much for
Yeah,
everything that you do and for your kind words and for explaining and educating all of us, whether we work with kids that are of age, whether we are have some our own sensory challenges, and for teachers and parents out there.
yeah, of course. Thanks for having me.
Thank you so much for listening to the Empowering Exceptional Minds podcast. For more inspiring conversations and neurodiversity affirming content, be sure to subscribe and follow us on YouTube, Apple Podcast, and Spotify. If you have questions, ideas for future episodes, or if you'd like to share your story as a guest, please reach out. We'd love to connect with you. Email us at edutherapyca@gmail.com or find us at Educational Therapy LLC. Thanks again for spending this time with us. Take care, and we'll see you again next time on Empowering Exceptional Minds.